It is my great privilege to welcome you to the 15th International Conference on Applied Behavior Analysis from the perspective of a scientist, practitioner, and parent. My name is Marta Wójcik, and together with my colleague Ewa Budzińska, good afternoon, we will host this part of the symposium. Today, we come together as researchers, clinicians, educators, and families, all bound by a shared commitment to understanding and enhancing human behavior in meaningful ways. Applied behavior analysis is more than a scientific discipline. It's a bridge between research and practice, between data and the real lives of individuals and families. As scientists, we seek to expand knowledge and translate that knowledge into action, helping individuals reach their full potential. As practitioners, as a parents and caregivers, we see firsthand the profound impact that ABA can have in shaping lives, fostering independence, and creating opportunities for growth. Thank you for being part of this vital conversation. I look forward to an inspiring and enriching lectures. A quick technical note to start. If you are watching us on Click Meeting and the presenter view, our faces in the square, covers the presentation, please click on the top left corner of the square. This will move the presenter view, ensuring that the presentation remains fully visible. Before we begin this part of the conference, allow me to introduce IBAO to those of you who join us for the English part of our symposium. We are the only dissemination site of PCDI in Poland, one of the world's leading therapeutic centers. Our work goes beyond practice. It also includes scientific research. We conduct studies and publish our findings. By sharing knowledge and experience, we raise professional standards and develop effective supports and methods. We have also introduced a certification system that validates the qualification of specialists and institutions working with our model. The IBAO Foundation strives to support children with autism as well as their teachers, parents on multiple levels. We provide individualized therapy for children with autism at the special kindergarten for children with ASD. At Kindergarten Bajkowa Akademia, we promote inclusive education by integrating neurodiverse children with neurotypical kids. In our clinic, we support families from all over Poland by offering psychological assessments and guidance. At the Teacher Training Center, we provide professional development for teachers, psychologists, and educators. Today, we have planned many interesting lectures for our symposium, which you can see on this slide. If you have any questions, please contact the presenters or write to us. Certificates will be available to download from this website. The password for the file will be automatically sent to each symposium participant who registered on Click Meeting, logged in on their own device, and attended the entire English language session. Certificates will be available for download until Monday inclusive. I would like to invite you to the first lecture in the English part, presented by Dr. Anna Budzińska and Dr. Anna Lubomirska. Dr. Anna Budzińska is a director of the Institute for Child Development in Gdańsk. She earned her psychology degree from the University of Gdańsk and in 2006 defended the first doctoral dissertation in Poland on the effectiveness of behavioral therapy for children with autism. She gained international experience through research, scholarships, and internships in Norway and the USA,
including a one-year training at the Princeton Child Development Institute. With a support from the Barbara Piasecka-Johnson Foundation in the city of Gdańsk, she established IBAO in 2006, the first European dissemination site of PCDI. Dr. Anna Lubomirska completed her Ph.D. in Behaviour analysis at Oslo Metropolitan University. She currently serves as the Deputy Director for Inclusive Education and as a supervisor at the Institute for Child Development and centers recommended by IBAO. She is a diagnostician at the clinic and a lecturer at the IBAO Teacher Training Center and in the postgraduate program at the University of Gdańsk. She is a member of a committee of the Behaviour Analyst Certificate. It is our great pleasure to invite you to the lecture, Inclusion of Kids with Autism and Scientific Research. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. It's very nice to meet you again, and I would like to introduce my colleague. Hello. And we will talk today about a very important subject, and which is inclusion of children with autism in education and scientific research. I think there are a lot of big discussions across Europe and even whole world about inclusion, and we would like to ask some questions, and maybe we will find some answers, but maybe not for every question. Let's see. What should education look like for preschool and primary school children with SEN, special educational needs? And first, definition of special education needs. Children have special education needs, SEN, if they have a learning problem or disability that makes it more difficult for them to learn compared to most children in their age. In case of children with ASD, they also have to struggle with persistent deficit in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts, and with restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interest, or activities. There are reports indicating that learning within inclusive education can contribute to well-being and a sense of belonging to the school environment. There is very little research showing the impact of inclusive education on academic outcomes, adaptive skills, and the reduction of problematic behaviors of children with SEN. And in the article written by Kurt and colleagues in 2014, we find the sentence that current international legislation and social imperatives encourage schools to educate students with special needs in general education settings to the greatest extent appropriate. And in the article from 2020, where we can find a review of literature, the author writes that find some methodological issues, which are, do students with SEN in the groups being compared have a similar level of disability? Are inclusive settings similar? There are broad sets of support for the principle of inclusion, but very little agreement as to how it should be implemented and even what it consists of. In another article from 2022, written by Linda Peterson-Bloom and her colleague, we find a very important sentence that professional development that includes autism-specific understanding and strategies for adjusting and modifying to accommodate autistic students is essential. And we found some general conclusions from research on inclusion of children with ASD. There is no research showing that inclusion from the beginning of education is the best way to help students with SEN, especially students with autism. And methodological issues in conducting research on inclusive education, which in turn affect the level of certainty of any conclusions, should be carefully considered. And there is one certain conclusion: teachers' skills are essential. And we, of course, know it very well, especially in our institute, where we provide hand-on-hand training to every therapist. And we have supervisions from outside, and we evaluate our program every year. So every therapist has to pass professional evaluation every year. And also, I also would like to present the research done by Marta Wójcik and colleague, which are her Ph.D. research, examining outcome for children with autism receiving intensive behavioral intervention. The research was done in our institute, and we compared two groups: group which received IBAO treatment in institute in Gdańsk, to the children which received eclectic treatment in other different facilities in Gdańsk. And what we found, that children in the IBI group made significantly larger gains in IQ and adaptive behaviors compared to children from the eclectic special education group. And you can see the differences in the table, that the mean number of changes in IQ in the group from IBI was 24, and from eclectic group was 6. And reduction of autism symptoms was also larger in the IBI group than in the eclectic special education group. And also there are some other research which you can find in the articles we present on the slide, and of course you can find it in other places. But first, Sigmund Eldevik and colleagues made meta-analysis of early intensive behavioral interventions for children with autism, and also Svein Eikesack and his colleague, they show outcome for children with autism receiving early intervention. And you can find also a research done by Jane Howard, where you will see the results of kids in receiving intensive treatment. And we found some general conclusions from research which we presented to you on improving functioning of children with ASD. And the effectiveness of treatment based on the principles of applied behavior analysis, ABA, has been confirmed by a large body of research. The vast majority of techniques deemed effective in scientific publications are based on the behavioral approach. Early behavioral intervention allows for significant progress in the areas of cognitive, social, and emotional functioning in a child with ASD. I will say some words about Institute, which I created, and I'm director since almost 20 years. It will be 20 years anniversary in 2026. And what I can tell you, maybe you know it, but for some new attenders, I will just say that we train specialists from Poland and other European countries. and assist in founding similar institutions, which we call institutions recommended by IWORD or IBAO. We also created a certification system in Poland. The IBAO activities consist of treatment, education, research, and the use of the latest scientific methods. And our institute cooperates with the University of Gdańsk, Gdańsk University of Technology, the Medical University of Gdańsk, and Oslo Med University, where we do our research together with our colleagues. And also, I would like to tell you about some tools which we were talking about during our last symposium. So if you would like to find what we were talking about, just listen to 14th International Scientific Symposium, which is on our homepage. And there are more informations about it. I will now say only a few words, but we have created together with Dr. Lubomirska a peer group social behavior observation sheets, and a tool is designed to help teachers, even those with little experience, make decisions about including a child with SEN, especially with autism, to a group. And peer group social behavior observation sheets is the tool which can be used independently of the child's diagnosis, speech level, and cognitive functioning. Allows determining which skills essential for learning in a peer group a child has mastered at one of the 3 measured levels. Helps in making decisions about which classes a child can attend and for how long. Help in creating an adequate program for a child, focus on compensating for deficits and developing missing skills. And peer group social behavior observation sheets are divided in 3 levels. Level 1 measures only problem behaviors such as aggression, difficulties in accepting the proximity of peers in receiving the teacher's help, and maintaining calm behavior in a group for a short period, which means since 5 till 15 minutes. On level 2, we measure skills from level 1 plus following basic instruction and answering simple general questions, both directed to the group and to the child. And the period which we assess can be longer. And on the level 3, we measure skills from level 1 and from level 2, plus answering detailed questions following most instructions directed to the group or to the child, and acquiring knowledge in a group. And the child on the level 3 is full-time during the lessons. And now we will say about case study, which is one of our students, and I will ask Anya to do it.
Okay, so I will describe the case of Ignash, who was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years, 11 months old, which is rather late, looking at his developmental age at that point, which was 1 year and 8 months. And shortly after getting diagnosis, he began treatment in IBAO. He was 4 years, 3 months old at that time. And this treatment was intensive behavioral intervention, lasting for 22.5 hours per week,
and conducted in one-to-one module. And right now I will show you his individual educational program throughout all years that he's attended IBAO. So during his first year, from November 2020 to June 2021, he had 50 educational programs, and they were created in order to develop all deficit areas. But we can see that the majority of programs were developed within expressive language plus social skills, receptive language, leisure skills as well. But we can also see that during this first year, he started group classes with his peers with ASD. During his second year of treatment, he had 115 educational programs, and the main emphasis was on expressive language plus social skills, but also on group classes. And here we can see that he already started programs developed in order to include him into the group with typically developing with neurotypical peers. These were programs for inclusive education. During his next year, he had 51 educational programs, and the majority of them, more than half of all programs, were aimed at developing expressive language plus social skills, and about 1/4 was were developing his skills needed for inclusion with neurotypical peers. And during his next year, we can see that about 1/3 of his programs were still developing expressive language plus social skills, and about 1/4 were aimed at inclusive education. So it was gradually more and more with every year. We also evaluated him with peer group social behavior observation sheets at the beginning of his treatment and when he was finishing his being here in IBAO. So at the beginning, we evaluated him with level 1 of these observation sheets. He was 4 years, 3 months old at that time. And within area of problem behaviors, we can see that he actually presented the majority of these problem behaviors. So the scoring here is very simple. 0 means no behavior, and 1 means that the behavior is present. So we can see that he was self-aggressive, aggressive towards teachers and his peers. He was shouting. He had difficulties in accepting closeness of a peer, but also in accepting help of a teacher. He destroyed materials, and he had difficulties in accepting louder sounds. Within the area of cognitive competences important for the inclusion process, we can see that actually he presented none of the required competences. So he wasn't able to sit or stand where teacher asked him to. He didn't attempt to follow teacher's instructions, or he wasn't able to suspend his activity when he was asked to without presenting problem behaviors. And after more than 3 years of treatment in IBAO, when he was 7 years and 10 months old, we evaluated him once again with peer group social behavior observation sheets. And within problem behaviors area, we can see that at that point he presented none of them. So none of existing previously problem behaviors were present right now. Within social behaviors area, we can see that he was able to present all of the required behaviors. So he could understand and strive for teachers' praise. He could react to his name. He presented no inappropriate statements. He was able to follow the group. He was able to wait in very different contexts. He was able to formulate his needs and requests, and also to ask for help. And within cognitive competences area, he also presented all of the required behaviors. So he was able to suspend the activity when he was asked to. He, generally speaking, was able to follow instructions and answer questions.
directed to the whole group or to him individually. And what is the most important thing, he was able to acquire knowledge during his classes with neurotypical peers. So to sum up, we've begun with many problem behaviors and no cognitive competences required to start inclusion process. So the conclusion at that point was very clear. This student wasn't ready for inclusion. He needed to start with IBI, which is intensive behavioral intervention, in one-to-one module. And after more than 3 years of treatment, when he was 7 years, 10 months old, he presented no problem behaviors, and his social behaviors and cognitive competences were at maximum, at the level that was really a maximum that a child can achieve according to these observation sheets. So then the conclusion was also very clear that at that point, this student was more than ready to start the inclusion, to be included and attend the lessons with his neurotypical peers. And can we see the video right now, please?
Odszukaj obrazki ptaków, pokoloruj je i policz. Szukamy tylko ptaszków i tylko ptaszki kolorujemy. Zaczynamy.
The instruction was find the pictures and color. And the child is in the group of peers in the classroom.
Zobacz. Inna z tych wszystkich ptaki znalazłaś? Na pewno? Tak, to jeszcze
He counts how many pictures he found and colored.
Ignaś, przesuń się tutaj bliżej. Brzuszek do łapki.
Teacher asked to move the chair toward the desk.
Nazywam się Ignacy i mam 7 lat i idę we wrześniu idę do szkoły.
Co Ci się najbardziej podobało w przedszkolu?
Zabawa z dziećmi.
I co jeszcze?
Bawienie się torami.
Okay, thank you for this video. So, trying to answer the question that was asked at the beginning of this presentation by Dr. Budzińska, what should education look like for preschool and primary school children with special educational needs? We have to remember that there is no one-size-fits-all answer for all of these children. We have to be guided by child's well-being and his or her level of intellectual and social functioning. But we should base our decision on scientific research, and this research is very clear that at the beginning, especially of the treatment, it should be the most effective intervention these ones that are based on ABA. So some general conclusions or some advice to take home with you is that actually such tools as peer group social observation sheets are very useful tools because they enable teachers to monitor problem and social behaviors and cognitive competences important in relation to the inclusion process. And then that Treatment for children with special educational needs, especially children with ASD, should always begin with intensive treatment based on principles of ABA. And within this intervention, teachers should implement programs aimed at compensating for these social behaviors and these cognitive competencies important in relation to the inclusion process, and all the time monitor how it goes with its students. And only based on these results, on children's outcomes, they can decide to what extent the inclusion is appropriate for their individual student. And one final thought that I would like imprint upon you is that we, people of science, we're specialists like psychologists, special educators, teachers, but also parents trying for the best for their children, should always base their decisions, their actions, but also their opinions on actual facts and not on the opinions of other people. And the actual fact right now is that there is no research indicating that the inclusion from the beginning is the best solution for all children with special educational needs, needless to say, for all children with ASD. We need much more research to be able to decide when and to what extent this inclusion is the best solution for our students. So by saying this, thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to ask us any questions through this email symposium.
Thank you very much. It was a big pleasure to present. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your presentation. The information shared was both valuable and thought-provoking, and we hope that it will be an inspiration for future research on such topic. Before we move to the next lecture, let me remind you that if you have any questions, please contact the presenters or write your questions at symposium@iwrd.pl. You will also be able to download the certificates from our website. The passport will be sent to you, and you will be able to download them until Monday. We are honored to welcome Dr. Michael Mueller, an expert in applied behavior analysis, who will be presenting on the topic International Certification in Applied Behavior Analysis. Dr. Mueller holds a Ph.D. and is a board-certified behavior analyst doctoral and international behavior analyst. As the executive director of the International Behavior Analysis Organization, he brings extensive experience in working with individuals with autism across various settings. His research spans parent and teacher training, functional analysis in school settings, pediatric feeding disorders, increasing communication and functional skill repertoires, and reducing severe behavioral challenges in school environments. Welcome, Dr. Michael Mueller, with the presentation, International Behavior Analysis Organization.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I need to let you know that I'm in a hotel in Tbilisi, Georgia, and there's an internet outage. And the receptionist was kind enough to let me use her cell phone to connect. So I'm hoping for a stable connection for the next few minutes while I deliver this information. Special thanks and gratitude to the Institute and to the organizers of this presentation, and for the opportunity to present this information, which I think is really important. My name is Michael Mueller. I'm the Executive Director of the IBAO, and I'm going to talk a little bit about international certifications in behavior analysis and the IBAO organization. So again, thanks for your time. IBAO is a certifying body for those who practice applied behavior analysis. We have created culturally relevant standards of practice for our certifications. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. But the reason that we exist is to address the needs of the ABA community internationally, meaning outside of North America. Certifications are really important because, first of all, there's a lack of certified applied behavior analysts worldwide. And to put some numbers around that, in 2023, there were over 270,000 certified professionals through the BACB in North America. There were about 8,000 in the 123 other countries around the world in which the BACB provided certifications. That number represents less than 3% of all of the certified professionals around the world. So it was very, very difficult outside of North America to obtain the certifications that were provided by the BACB. We'll talk about some of those reasons momentarily, but there are a lack of certified professionals. There are more people providing or saying that they're providing ABA services than there are certified professionals providing ABA services. This creates an extreme difficulty for consumers, who are typically parents, school teachers, caregivers, etc., to distinguish between those providers who are properly trained and have entered the field meeting the industry standards and those who have not. We want consumers to know what to expect when they hire a certified behavior analyst. We want them to know the professional expectations, the ethical expectations, and what they are supposed to get clinically in terms of at least a basic skill level, hopefully more. So we want this information to be transparent, and the more people that are certified, the easier it will be for consumers to see who falls outside of that bubble and who has done things properly. That's not to say that there aren't qualified people providing behavior analytic services without certifications. There probably are, and we recognize that. The problem is consumers have no objective way to tell who might be uncertified and really qualified and who is uncertified because they have not received the proper training. Another really important reason, and it's really for the acknowledgement of the professional who's going to be certified, is that it's a tremendous professional acknowledgement. The people who have dedicated their time, their money, their effort, and their careers to helping people through the delivery of ABA services deserve to be acknowledged for doing it properly, because some people have not. And so it's a true professional recognition for those who have gone about it the right way. I received my Ph.D. in 2002 and my BCBA in 2002. And I felt like getting those other letters after my name, finally kind of completed the package so that someone could see my signature line, see my business card, and know exactly the profession that I was in. So I was extremely proud of that. I've had the opportunity and the honor to present some certifications to people who have just earned them. And I've seen it bring them to tears. I mean, it's really moving and it's really touching to see how proud they are. So I don't think it's just a personal feeling that I've had. I mean, I've seen it on other people, and it's important. It's important. It's a really, really important professional step. So right now, the IBAO has certificates and candidates in 90 different countries around the world, every continent except Antarctica. And again, we've created culturally relevant educational, training, experiential, and knowledge standards that really pertain to the whole world. We've created ethical guidelines that reflect the various cultures and differences around the globe. On the ethical side, it's really beyond the scope of this training to get into details about it, but there are different philosophical viewpoints to ethics in general. What ethics are and how they are to be applied to certain behaviors and what makes things ethical and unethical. One of those philosophies is deontological ethics, where things are black and white. You either do something which is ethical, or you don't do that thing which is unethical. It doesn't matter why you do it or why you didn't do it. It's a black and white rule. This is more in line with the BACB's ethical code for things such as gift giving, multiple relationships, and other things that probably should require context and culture considerations. IBAO ethics are more consequentialism, which means we don't have black and white rules. We have aspirational guidelines that are applied to different situations in the context, cultural context, different considerations, so that two people can make different decisions, and both of those are ethical choices. So the intent matters, the consequences of the behavior matters. It's not a black and white rule. And you can kind of go down these different ethical considerations and look at how that creates flexibility to be applied differently in different situations around the world. We were able to do this by, in early 2020, going through 2021, creating a professional advisory board whose first iteration was about 45 behavior analysts from 22 different countries. And the first meetings that we had were really to understand why it was so difficult. What were the issues? What were the actual barriers and obstacles that were preventing people from accessing the certifications that existed currently? And what we found, and there were some different reasons for this from different places, but ultimately the list was that they were very expensive, that the cost was not worth the value, essentially, not worth the utility. There were a lack of translations, lack of translated exams, lack of translated requirements, website, things like that. The tests, the exams themselves had to be taken at exam centers that didn't exist in every country, which created not just an additional expense, but sometimes international travel, hotel rooms, meals, safety concerns. There were lack of university training options and lack of what were at the time verified course sequences around the world. And the educational systems were different enough around the world that someone could go through their own educational system in their country, get their bachelor's degree, their master's degree, submit that to the BACB, and that not be accepted because it wasn't an equivalent. So you had people that, no fault of their own, completed the requirements under a system that just didn't align with the US, and they weren't able to get certified. And there were a lack of supervisors. It's interesting if you kind of go back and look over the history of the BACB. The BACB started in 1998. If you look at the number of ABA hours that were required, that changed from 180 to 225 to 270, it's now 315. Who could be a supervisor changed from a very broad category of unsupervised professionals to those requiring a BCBA, to those requiring a BCBA with specialized training, to those requiring BCBA with specialized training with more than a year experience. You can take every requirement, and over time, it's been more and more restrictive, which has been probably beneficial to the US market in many ways, but the rest of the world's ABA communities have not been able to catch up, and they haven't been able to keep up, and it's been increasingly difficult outside the US to meet these more and more restrictive procedures. So as we'll see momentarily, the IBAO requirements and standards have had to adjust and were adjusted and created to take into consideration where the international markets have been and where they are currently. And so that's the cultural influence and the diversity influence of having such a broad professional advisory board, taking into account so many different perspectives. Currently, our professional advisory board is about 90 behavior analysts from 60 different countries. And this is organized into country and regional representatives, an ethics committee, accreditation committee, approved content provider review committee, exam review committee, social media, and then committees by language. The ethics committee, because I already mentioned the ethics, is probably important. First of all, we have very few ethical complaints or allegations. Our method of dealing with these is in line with applied behavior analysis, where our first instinct is not to punish behavior, but to inform and change so that people can stay in the field, under the fold of the organization, and be demonstrating better behavior in the future. We certainly don't take it off the table to use those tactics, but we are decidedly different than other ethical decision-making bodies. So these are the requirements for the International Behavior Analyst. We have options for a master's or non-master's degree. If you do not have a master's and you have a bachelor's degree, there's additional academic-related projects that are decided by the supervisor. We have 270 hours of required educational objectives. These are ABA-specific coursework. Currently, there's a 1,000-hour practice requirement. As of October 1st, that will become 1,500-hour experience requirement. Currently, it's 50 hours of supervision on that 1,000 hours. In October 1st, it becomes 75 hours of supervision on the new 1,500-hour requirement. We also have live candidate skills testing. These are essentially treatment integrity evaluations of different skill implementations that are decided between the candidate and the supervisor. It's not a static set. It changes based on the area of specificity that someone is practicing for. We have pre-certification CEUs. We have 4 different categories of CEUs. General ABA, which are clinical topics. We have ethics, supervision, and cultural category that we are unique to have. The exam is online. It's 150 items. It can be taken anywhere that you have a quiet environment and a secure internet connection. The International Behavior Analyst has a unique first-year certification requirement that requires 24 hours of mentorship. This is not a supervision requirement. Mentorship basically just forces someone to have professional networking and connections so they can bounce ideas off them, so they can ask questions, so they can have someone take a look at what they're doing. The mentor is not responsible for their decisions. Again, it's not supervision, but it does create a forced connection with people who are more senior in the field. Post-certification renewal requirements are 24 hours of CEUs over the 2-year period. For the behavior therapist or behavior technician, we have the International Behavior Therapist. This requires high school diploma or equivalent, a 40-hour training in applied behavior analysis. And then what's unique to this particular level of certification is that we have a 300-hour practice requirement and 10 hours of supervision. The supervision can be group supervision of people up to 5. It can be remote, meaning that someone doesn't have to be live right there standing over their shoulder, although that's better. This is different than what was customary with the RBT, because the group really considered what was best practice, not how to replicate a system that was based essentially on U.S. insurance requirements. But what did we really need as a field to make this particular position stronger? And practice and supervision was really a no-brainer. These certification requirements also have 2 candidate skills testing, where the RBT is a static competency test. This has 2 candidate skills tests that are decided by the supervisor and the candidate. Then there's an online 75-item knowledge exam. Here are just a little quick peek at some of the countries that we have certificates and candidates. Quick update on our numbers. IBAO has slightly more than this, but 5170 certificates and candidates, 90 different countries. We have more than 400 approved content providers and CEU providers. And what's really cool about this is their training is provided in 32 different languages, 32. We have documents translated into 20 different languages, including Polish. The website is translated into 14 languages, including Polish. The exams are translated now into 14 different languages. The Polish translations are underway, so we expect to have those relatively soon. And the idea with all of this was to create a situation where somebody could understand what to do, read the requirements, go to the website, read and understand the website, complete all the requirements, and take the exam in their native language. The idea that someone has to be essentially a fluent English writer, speaker, and test taker to be a certified behavior analyst outside the U.S. Has never been more achievable, and we're well on our way to increasing these languages so more and more people can access this in their native language. Here are some of the languages in which the documents and exams are translated. The ones in red are forthcoming. And honored to point out those from Poland who have helped us in many ways. Kate Abish-Branich, Pavel Bakraz, Anna Budzińska, who was just on before me. Thank you very much. She's been a terrific influence. Małgorzata Lipowska, Marta Saraka Ragala, and Monica Saczwerska Stefani. I probably just butchered those names, but I did the best that I could. I really do appreciate their help and their influence and their perspective, telling us about the existing certifications, which I do need to mention that the CAZ, which is provided by the IWRD, the Institute bringing us the presentations tonight, the IBA certification that we have a reciprocity type arrangement so that if someone obtains the CAZ in Poland, they can obtain the IBA from us without doing any other requirements or taking the exam. We're considering it just an equal split and allow someone to obtain the international certification that's equivalent to now the national certification in Poland. That information in that process and allowing us to understand how that best works comes from the people who are there on the ground. And that is the beautiful thing about the advisory board is we get this kind of perspective from people around the world. So thank you, ladies, and Powell, for your efforts and contribution. We have currently 19 certificates in Poland, 3 candidates, and we have 7 approved content and CEU providers. So we have a small but growing international community of certified behavior analysts, and we're very proud of that. And we're thankful of the support that we receive from there, and we're thankful to try to support your growth of your growing ABA community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing the very important information about the certification with us, especially that the circumstances in your hotel were not very pleasant. So thank you very much for managing to join the conference anyway. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Now we will take a short break and we will be back in approximately 15 minutes. So please stay connected and join us when we resume. See you soon. While we are on a break, I would like to tell you about an initiative that has a real impact on the quality of therapy, 15 minutes for treatment. This is a short but effective course that enables specialists and parents to systematically develop their skills and enhance the quality of their work with individuals in their care. We encourage you to explore 15 minutes for treatment now or after the symposium. See you soon. Welcome back. I hope you're all ready for our last part of the symposium. We are honored to welcome Dr. Michelle Carey, an expert in the field of behavior analysis, who will be presenting on the topic Relevance and Applications of Behavior Analysis for the Aging Population. Dr. Carey holds a Ph.D. in behavior analysis and therapy. With a rich academic and research background, She has contributed significantly to the development of evidence-based brain health interventions for individuals living with dementia. Currently, serving as an associate professor in the psychology department at the National College of Ireland, Dr. Kelly co-directs the ProBrain Research Lab and leads research projects on cognitive stimulation therapy and cognitive rehabilitation. We will look forward to hearing Dr. Kelly's presentation. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Interestingly, like Michael, I am also in a hotel lobby, but I found a quiet space, so hopefully people can hear me okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about applications of behavior analysis with older adults. So first of all, what is the rationale around this? Do we need lots of support for the aging population? And the answer is yes. So due to advances in healthcare and, health literacy, we know more about keeping healthy for longer. So life expectancy is increasing. Currently in the UK or in the EU, life expectancy is around 81.5 years. But if you look here at the UN projections, these projections are going up to the year 2102, at which point people will be living to near 90. That will be the average life expectancy. So this is all very positive. Living longer, there's lots of benefits to that, but I guess with longer life does come some additional challenges. And some of those challenges are around maybe reduced functional independence, but also age is one of the biggest risk factors for cognitive decline and for dementia. Just to mention as well, a lot of us in behaviour analysis work in intellectual disability services. And a note that the incidence of dementia in people with intellectual disabilities is up to 5 times higher than in that general population. And so really this is something that should be a real priority in thinking about how we support people in the general population and those with intellectual disabilities. The risk of developing dementia for Down syndrome is even higher again. So just to kind of demonstrate this, I want to tell you about an Irish study that was conducted in Trinity College. And this study recruited 77 people with Down syndrome aged 35 plus and followed them for a period of 20 years. And at the end of that 20-year period, 75 out of the 77 people had went on to develop dementia. So really you're talking about very, very high risk for people with Down syndrome, and also the age profile. People with Down syndrome tend to develop dementia much younger than those in the general population. We can see this here on this graph. You can see the kind of pink color, that's the expected incidence of cognitive decline for people in the general population, sort of pushing more towards older age. Much higher rates, those blue bars are intellectual disability, much higher rates. And then we see those kind of yellowy cream colored bars, they're the rates for people with Down syndrome. So much earlier for those with Down syndrome and much higher rates than the general population as well. So that brings me to behavioural gerontology. Behavioural gerontology has been around a long time, since the 80s. But I think there's a real demand now for behaviour analysts and behaviour support specialists to start thinking about how applicable our skills are for older adults. And, the need for this is only going to increase as we see that ageing population. So there's a real demand there for our behavioural services. I'm going to give you some brief examples of the types of behaviour support that we can provide in dementia prevention. Early interventions, and then if I have time, I'll go on to more moderate or later stage interventions that are relevant. So first of all, focusing on dementia prevention. I want to highlight this because I think as behaviour analysts or behaviour support specialists, we don't often think about how we might be able to prevent dementia, but we do have a role here. So in 2020, The Lancet published this fascinating article that identified that there are 12 modifiable risk factors that could be responsible for up to 40% of the worldwide dementias. So if we can reduce these risk factors, support people to be able to identify and reduce these risk factors, we could be reducing the numbers of people who go on to develop dementia. I know the writing is a little bit small on that slide. It's tiny on my screen because my laptop is small. But if you can look really closely and squint, you'll see some of those things those risk factors are around physical activity, smoking. There's things there around social isolation, alcohol intake, and then there's other factors like hypertension and obesity and type 2 diabetes that with increased physical activity and a healthier diet, they could be addressed. So hopefully people already see where our role is here, but I'll talk you through some specific types of strategies that we can incorporate to prevent or delay the onset of dementia. Physical activity is incredibly important for brain health. So any person or any individuals that we work with, we have to try to promote as much physical activity as possible, because it's going to have that positive impact and potentially delay cognitive decline. When we're thinking about physical activity, we think about what are those motivating operations, how do we adapt the environment to make somebody more likely to engage in physical activity. We want to set goals with individuals that are personal for them. So, I don't want to walk on a treadmill. I can't stand it. That's not going to be for me. I would rather go out for a walk outside. So when we're working with individuals around increasing their activity levels, we want to make sure that it's something that works for them, that it's person-centered. There's a lovely example of this. There's some work going on in Galway, this Behaviour project, where teenagers were taught through virtual reality to be able to play table tennis. And it was just a perfect way of physical activity and social engagement for those young people, young autistic teenagers. Mental stimulation and occupational attainment is another important point. So we want to make sure that people are stimulated throughout their lives, but also that people are able to engage in meaningful occupation or jobs. And we know that there are real difficulties for people with intellectual disabilities or autistic people being able to access equal opportunities in relation to employment. So another fabulous example of the work that's happening here in Ireland is in Galway again. They're working on virtual reality technology to support people to be able to experience what it's like to be in a work environment. And through multiple different role plays, demonstrating the types of social interactions that might happen in a work environment, or what it might be like to sit for an interview. So it's really about trying to give people the tools to be able to be successful at interview and to be able to engage in meaningful employment. And that's going to be preventative in relation to dementia as well. With the healthy diet and social engagement, I think these are probably two that we're maybe more familiar with as behaviour analysts. Feeding interventions, increasing dietary variety. This is a lot of the work that we would be quite familiar with. So that kind of work that you might do with younger clients, that's something that you think about, okay, how do we promote this in midlife and in later life? And that's absolutely going to promote brain health as well. And with social engagement, so one of a really important and large risk factor for dementia is social isolation. And this is relevant in teenage years and also in midlife. So where people are socially isolated, they really are at risk for poor brain health. And this is why our social interventions and interventions like social circles, where we're supporting people with intellectual disabilities to be able to engage in a way that's meaningful for them. In these kinds of social environments, that's an incredibly important focus for people to have also. I want to talk a little bit about early interventions as well. This is just, I'm skimming through everything, but if people want to follow up with me afterwards, you can. But early interventions for dementia as well. So, we talked about prevention, but what about if we're working with people who are past the point of prevention and they already have that diagnosis of dementia? A lot of the work that I'm focused on at the moment is around what's called cognitive rehabilitation. And this is an intervention that has a strong evidence base, that it improves functional outcomes for people with dementia. So it improves people to be able to remain as independent as possible for as long as possible. Here in Ireland, Cog Rehab, as I'll call it for short, Cog Rehab is recommended by our dementia model of care. But we are not able to offer it widely because we don't have the resources to do it. So I have a feeling in other countries, this might be quite similar. You know, we'd love to offer all of these supports, but maybe we don't have the staff to do it. So my most recent project, we have provided a sort of a solution to this problem. So we had trainee behavioral psychology students. So these are students in master's level ABA courses who were required as part of their course to do placement, supervised placement. Now, they weren't getting placements in older adult services because there were none available. At the same time, we had memory clinics that wanted to offer cog rehab but couldn't because they didn't have staff. So we brought together these two needs and we got the memory clinics to create placement opportunities for our master's students. And now our master's students, as we speak, are out in the community delivering cog rehab to people with dementia. So we're hoping to be able to roll out this model on across the country and provide some information about how the model is best rolled out. Just to tell you a couple of brief examples of interventions of what we can do with cog rehab. So our therapists work in people's homes, and a lot of the stuff they would focus on would be around increasing functional independence and activities of daily living. So our therapists, for example, might identify a goal with the participant that they want to, it might be something as simple as they want to be able to make a cup of tea. They might want to be able to work their mobile phone, maybe they want to be able to plan their scheduling a little bit more independently. And each of these goals, we would use something quite simple, like just do a task analysis, use a chaining procedure with prompting and fading, and we would, get our participants to role play and work through these, engaging in these tasks. And typically we see amazing improvements. Using the mobile phone is actually a very popular one. So lots of our participants will say, I never use that thing, I don't want to touch it. But if you think about it from a health and safety point of view, being able to use their phone is really important. It's also good mental stimulation. So we've had multiple instances where people initially go, no thanks. And by the end of an 8-week intervention with our practitioners, they're able to make calls and send texts on their mobile phone. We also focus on memory rehabilitation quite specifically. So it could be something like face name recall. So somebody might say, I have 7 grandchildren and I'm starting to mix up their names. So we would use something very simple. We could get photographs of the grandchildren. We use discrete trial training type work, maybe some discrimination training with the pictures. We use multiple exemplars, and we support our participants to be able to learn or identify the names of their grandchildren or the names that are on those pictures. And this is another very effective strategy. And we also sometimes we might use precision teaching. So if we have a recall task, if we teach the grandchildren's names, but we want to build that to fluency, we can build in a precision teaching strategy to really support that fluency in relation to recall. So these types of strategies, these are the types of things that we'd be familiar with in classroom settings. These translate very well into cognitive rehabilitation sessions for people with dementia. And we have some nice data there. So there's some multiple baseline graphs. This is multiple baseline across goals for 2 different participants. And just very briefly, you can see that improvement in our participants' performance. These are people who have a diagnosis of dementia, maybe mild to moderate impairment, and they're able to learn new things, or they're able to relearn information that they may have forgotten. So some very encouraging data. In relation to moderate stages of dementia, we had another project that we're just looking to get published at the moment. And this was where we used behavioural skills training in a healthcare setting to support people to be more independent. So for people with dementia, it's very important that they're able to be as independent as possible. We want to reduce excess disability and improve functional ability. So this example was a staff member worked in a nursing home, and she set up a behavioural skills training programme, and she just taught the staff how to use least to most prompting. Staff were going in with the highest level of prompt always straight away for supporting people to stand up from a chair, supporting people to take a drink, and supporting people to brush their teeth. Staff were basically just doing that for all of the residents. And the student that I was working with, she trained the staff to just know how to do least most prompting. And it was incredibly effective. So I'm not going to get into the technical information, but we did use a randomized N of 1 design here, which was a little bit maybe different. And we followed some guidelines to make sure that we used a really good quality design. I'm going to skip that one. That's about the design. So these are our graphs. So again, we can see, and the data is from the staff. Now, this is not data from people with dementia. This is the staff performance. So here we're seeing that at baseline in general, staff were, they were not using those least most prompting procedures. And then after the training, they were much better able to support people to be independent. And that just meant knowing when to step back, knowing when to say, that person does not need me to brush their teeth for them. They might need some visual cues or some gestural prompts, but that's it. And this meant that people with dementia in those care environments could be much more independent. So this was very meaningful for those residents in those care environments. In relation to interventions then for later stages of dementia, this would be predominantly focused around maybe functional assessment and functional communication training. So I guess this is our bread and butter. This is what we would be in behaviour analysis, we'd be very much familiar with. And this is very relevant for those later stages. So when people with dementia start to experience what's called the behavioural and psychological symptoms of dementia, it's important that we understand that sometimes just, prescribing an antipsychotic medication is not going to be the answer here. We need to look at what is the function of that behaviour? How can we adapt the environment to support more positive outcomes? And how effective can that be? And a number of there's so much more research on this, to be honest, than the other stuff in behaviour analysis. But this research really consistently demonstrates improvements in those behavioural symptoms when we use functional analysis. I mean, surprise, surprise, that's not a surprise to any of us, but I think some people working in dementia care go, wow, what is this magic? It's a functional analysis, and it's a functional analysis informed intervention. So just very briefly, I'm just going to finish here. So considerations for memory impairment, I would say that when you're working with people with dementia, identifying function can be very difficult. And it is 9 times out of 10, it is not as straightforward as the 4 functions of behaviour that we would be quite familiar with. Sometimes we can't really identify exactly what it is. At the later stages, it's easier, not at the earlier stages. So if people are having difficulty around identifying the function of the behaviour, I would say think about not only focusing on the behaviour of the individual, focus on the behaviour of everybody else. Everybody else's behaviour can really impact the behaviour of the individual. And that is the essence of Kit Wood's work on person-centred care. Talk to staff and talk to family about any relevant contextual variable. So is it just that the environment is too confusing? Can environmental adaptations be made? Something as simple as maybe a sign on a door, that can be very helpful or can support positive improvements in behaviour for people. So just a massive shout out to my Probe Brain research team and a shout out to our funders that fund all of our research as well. Thank you very much. I can't believe I finished on time. Normally I get carried away and talk for way longer.
Thank you for a wonderful lecture. Thank you for showing the use of IBA in another field. And we are very grateful for the opportunity to learn from you. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Karola Dillenburger, who has provided a recorded presentation for this conference titled Safeguarding the Professional Integrity of Behavior Analysts, Why This is Important Nationally and Internationally. Karola Dillenburger is a professor of behavior analysis and education and the director of the Center of Behavior Analysis at Queen's University in Belfast. She currently serves as the president of the European Association for Behavior Analysis. Her research areas include neurodiversity, evidence-based interventions, behavioral parent training, and supporting individuals with disabilities. We are honored to have her valuable insight shared with us through this recording.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today with you for your symposium. And I will welcome you all to my talk about safeguarding the professional integrity of behavior analysts and why this is important why it is important nationally and internationally. I will share my screen with you here so that you can see my talk, my slides. First of all, before we start, I always want to just make sure that we all understand behavior analysis accurately. And so I'm going to just remind you that behavior analysis has three aspects to it, like any other science. There's a conceptual basis. We call it radical behaviorism from the Latin, radix, going to the root, meaning that going to the root, original, essential, which is quite distinct from methodological behaviorism. We're not going to go into that very much today, but if you have any queries about it, there's plenty of written material on that. The experimental analysis of behavior, basic science, like all the other sciences, have a laboratory aspect of it where the experiments are done. And of course, then the applied aspect, which we call applied behavior analysis. And like all other sciences, behavior analysis is taught at a university level. So we have university professionally approved course sequences. And these also include supervised practice and continuing education requirements. Just when we're talking about behavior analysis, we need to just define our terms very quickly. The subject matter in behavior analysis is behavior, and that includes a whole range of things. That includes learning, that includes motivation, that also includes feelings and emotions. The mind, for instance, it includes development, it includes intention, it includes everything, physical movement, of course, and sensory movement, and language, and thinking and cognition. So when we are talking about behavior in behavior analysis, we have a very holistic view of behavior, and that's where the philosophy comes into it a little bit. But again, that's not our topic for today. Just a quick reminder. A quick reminder then on IBAO, the definition. The definition of IBAO, applied behavior analysis, the applied arm of the science, is discovering environmental variables that reliably influence socially significant behavior and develop interventions for behavior change that take practical advantage of these discoveries from the discoveries from the experimental analysis of behavior. That's where the science, the application and the experimentation go hand in hand. In experimental analysis of behavior, we might discover certain principles that we then apply to socially relevant and socially significant behavior, which is the important point here, that it's socially significant. Behavior analysts all over the world agree to this definition. Socially significant, of course, means different things to different people, and it's culturally determined, and it is determined by the individuals that you're working with, by their families, by their social context, and of course by their culture. So beware that it has to be socially significant to the person that you're working with. Generally speaking, whenever applied behavior analysis is used, parents, for instance, of children with profound autism express strong positive views based on their experience. They say the child needs IBAO, and without IBAO, the child wouldn't do a whole range of different things. And you can see here children just getting voice for autism. Johnny here in the middle. He's a young adult with very severe autism. He's learned so many skills, and Thomas there going on his runs. The problem is that IBAO is not understood by everybody properly. So some autistic self-advocates express strong views based on their personal experience or on misinformation. They say that ABA is abuse and ABA causes harm. And if you haven't heard those sayings yet, it's only a question of time until you do, because they're very prevalent in English-speaking countries. So maybe they haven't got all the way to the Polish-speaking countries just yet, but you probably will come across that. So I'm putting this up just to make you aware that not everybody is in favour, but very often the people that are not in favour are either not very well trained in it or not trained in it at all in the science, or they have had some personal experience with some malpractice. That's absolutely possible as well. Or they have just believed what they hear on the internet. So basically, the anti-ABA's views sometimes caricature ABA quite strangely, and they misunderstand it, or they're based on malpractice. So beware that that's possibly out there when you're going out to practice. The consequences for the autistic people and their families are very stark. There was a recent program on in Northern Ireland called Spotlight. It was called I Am Not Okay, where 4 mothers, you see them here, were describing the life that they had with their autistic child who had not received ABA-based interventions. Other people are talking about, in England, they're talking about locked or padded rooms, or even fenced in areas of the playground so the children don't run off. And just generally, the education authorities in the UK apologise for their special needs failings, but they're still not adopting ABA. And sometimes it can be difficult. Brandolini had put out a tweet, actually. It was just interesting, but because it really captured it. The amount of energy needed to refute bullshit, he says, or nonsense, is in an order of magnitude larger, 10 times larger than it is needed to produce it. And I think this wee image here of the bottle is quite a good image. It's easy to smash a bottle. It's much harder to put it back together again. So, so there you have behaviour analysts. It's really important that we preserve the integrity of the profession. And one of the things we have, of course, are the core ethical principles. The ethics of behaviour analysis are important because behaviour analysts are called when behaviour challenges are severe and complex. Mostly, behaviour analysts are called in when it gets really, really serious. Behaviour analytic procedures are powerful. We know this. So behaviour analysts should always work to benefit others, to treat others with compassion, dignity, and respect, and behave with integrity and ensure their own competence. That's a really important point, especially of ensuring your own competence through training and continuous training after you qualify, continuous professional development, and ensure that you're not only you have your area of practice, scope of practice, which is all behaviours, but that you're competent in the area that you apply behaviour analysis. So we also have the requirement to do no harm, basically. We're not like lawyers at the moment that we have that code of, the oath to do no harm, the Hippocratic oath. We're not swearing that yet, but wouldn't it be an idea to think about that? Where there's law breaking by behaviour analysts, this is investigated, addressed through the legal channels, and should be. But where there's malpractice, this needs to be investigated by a professional body. So who is that professional body? Who sets the standards? Who investigates the malpractice, and who provides the sanctions? And who makes the decisions? Just really important questions. So we need well-trained, experienced professionals to implement ethically evidence-based interventions to improve the independence and inclusion for anybody that we work with. I know most of you probably work in the field of autism, and most of you probably work with profoundly autistic individuals. And that's certainly an area for behaviour analysts to work in, but it's not the only area. Behaviour analysts also work in mainstream education, in business, in sport, in a whole range of different areas, with typically developing individuals just as much as with people with disabilities. There's a growing number of behaviour analysts are working with kids with Down syndrome. With Down syndrome, I need to pronounce it properly, so that you know. So autism is not the only area for behaviour analysts to work in. But what has happened in the States, for instance, just use that as an example, because that's where things have moved along the furthest. It started with Ryan's Law in 2005 in South Carolina, and since then, every single state in the US, every one of the 50 states, has got a law mandating that health insurance covers evidence-based practice evidence-based practice based on ABA. So that meant then that so many more people qualified to become behavior analysts. And in the US, in America, it means to become a board-certified behavior analyst, BCBA. The BACB, the letters are confusing, is the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. That is the professional board that carries out the assessment and the exam of people that want to become board-certified behavior analysts. And as you can see here from that graph, that number has grown very, very exponentially since 2006, since basically shortly after Ryan's Law came in. Here the line shows you when Ryan's Law came in, and since then in all the states, the insurance law, obviously with insurance law comes financial coverage, which means that behavior analytic interventions can be claimed back from the insurances, and of course that means then that that there's a rise in the need for well-qualified behavior analysts. Now, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board is accredited by the US National Commissioning for Certifying Agencies, NCCA, which is really important because that is their body that recognizes all the professions, not just behavior analysts, all the different professions, and certainly in allied health and health and education. And there are accrediting bodies. This is one of the American ones. Behavior analysts have to have undertaken a verified course sequence that supervised practice and sit an exam. They have 4 different certification levels. You can the registered behavior technician is the lowest level. It's only 40 hours of training, some practice and some exam. Then you have the assistant behavior analyst, the board certified behavior analyst, and then you have the doctoral level. So in some states in the US, they also have licensure laws for behavior analysts. That's a growing trend. And so they also have the colleges that offer these course sequences. As you can see, a little bit bunched up on the west and the east coast, but generally speaking, all over North America, you have the verified course sequences. So there's training, there's practice, and then there's a funding for the professionals so that they can earn a living. It used to be until the 1st of the 1st, 2023, that other people from other countries, residents that are not American, not US residents, could sit the exam. Like myself, I sat it in 2006. There were people sitting the exam, a growing number of people, but then they realized that really that's not really possible for a non-US resident to sit a US-based exam. The qualification doesn't really mean anything in your own country. So that was a little bit of a problem. So they realized that the NCCA also said that if they continue to recognize or certify people that are not resident in the US, they can't really they don't have jurisdiction over those people, and therefore this cannot no longer go on. So they stopped it by the 1st of the 1st of 23. So now only US and Canada residents can get certified. And that's really, I mean, it was a bit of a shock to the system because everybody thought sitting the BACB exam was something that really meant anything in different countries. But of course, it doesn't really mean anything in, say, for instance, in Poland. If you have an American qualification, they have no standing in the Polish jurisdiction. So it's not legally defensible in any other country, a US certification. And the NCCA was going to withdraw their accreditation from the Americans. So they said, that can't happen. So basically, all the laws that were written into the US legal system obviously don't apply to other countries. So really, it was not possible. And they also realized there were some cultural and ethical differences. So who's going to fill the gap? The BACB is no longer certifying people. Who's going to fill the gap? And very quickly, a number of different bodies came along and said, we can fill this gap. But when you look at it realistically, the same issues arise for all USA or foreign organizations. No other profession has global regulation. The National Commissioning, the NCCA, will not approve any It will not approve any profession for the USA if they also offer it to people that don't even reside in the USA. And the USA-based certification requirements are not legally recognized in any other countries. So there's only one legal solution for this: country-specific professional regulation. And then once we have that for different countries, each country has to have regulation for their own behavior analysts, because that's the only legal way to do it. And once we have that, then we can come to mutual agreements between countries so that there's mobility between behavior analysts. And we started this process a long time ago. Because I got a phone call, I got an email from a parent in Prague asking for help in April 2015. And as you can see from the pictures here, we had a big conference. We had media coverage, we had some course teaching, and then at the bottom here you can see the parliamentary hearing that we had and the meeting with the ministers. So what happened? We had the parliamentary hearing. There were 150 parliamentarians at the meeting. Then we met with the Minister for Health and the Minister for Education. This was all happening in the Czech Republic in early 2016. Then the Ministry of Education, through all of that, decided that they would sponsor an IBAO program development in the Czech Republic. That included training 15 behavior analysts at Queen's. We offer an online master's degree in behavior analysis, so they were going to send us up to 15 students from the Czech Republic. Now, it didn't work out that we got all 15. Some of them went to America instead, but that's fine. At least there were 15 people trained, because at that time when we first got into when I first got the email, there was not a single qualified behavior analyst in the Czech Republic. So over the years we got 15. They also started to develop their own program in Maastricht University in Brno. And originally the first program, because they didn't have anybody qualified themselves, Professor Mickey Keenan from Ulster University ran the program, but soon it's now taken over by the Czech professors themselves. So they also then very quickly in September 17 got a law to recognize the profession by law. So the Czech Republic is the first country in Europe to recognize a profession of behavior analysts within their legal system. The education and licensing system in the Czech allied health professions is governed by the Act 96/2004 call, and this licensure for behavior analysts and assistant behavior analysts and behavior technicians was added to that law. And there are the numbers for the Act. So this is really important. They also obviously then set up the Czech Society for Behavior Analysis. And so things were going really well in the Czech Republic. They have now got quite a number of certified behavior analysts under that law. In the UK, things were a lot slower. In 2009, I realized that we needed this. This is a long time project of mine. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm registered as a clinical psychologist. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, we need to get behavior analysts clinically registered as well and recognized. So I wrote to a colleague who was at the time the applied representative for the European Association for Behavior Analysis, Dr. Neil Martin. We nearly got it done, but it wasn't until much later, with many more people, the UK Society for Behavior Analysis was set up, and we eventually, in the UK, in January 2023, we finally got a recognised, approved register for behaviour analysts through the UK Society of Behaviour Analysis. And this register is accredited by the Professional Standards Authority, which is the accrediting body for allied health professions in the UK. There are various ways of becoming a BCBA, not a BCBA, a UK BA cert. That's the name. So you want to be if you're a behavior analyst in the UK, you want to be a UK BA cert. And sooner or later, these people are now also sought after by the various health boards, education boards, even the prison. So not just in autism, in a whole range of different professions. We also developed the European Behaviour Analyst project to set out common standards for behavior analysts across Europe. Now, this was heavily modeled on the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, the American system, but not copyrighted. So we have, because this was funded through the European Union, we can provide this for free of charge for anybody who wants to get recognized in their country. We developed a range of different documents that can be helpful, hopefully considered helpful, if countries want to go forward and get professional recognition in their country, so they don't have to start with an empty page. We have many reports and papers free to use and translate. We're trying to get transparency and recognition of the qualification and basically improve future ABA-based supports. Really, my dream would be to have a multinational agreement of mobility and employability across Europe at some point. But for that to start happening, we need more than one country in the EU. And this would be for the EU. More than one country having the professional recognition. At the moment, we have the Czech Republic and we have the UK. To my knowledge, that's the only two countries. Of course, the UK is not in the EU anymore, so we can't have an EU bridging agreement. But there's a long history with this project. We had a lot of multimedia training materials, lots of people involved. We had conferences at Queen's University with the minister attending, with Laura Unum from America attending. I'm rushing this through a little bit because I'm quite aware that I'm running out of time. But here is your the different documents that we produced. There's the web link for you to download them, translate them into Polish if you so wish. It would be nice if you did, if they were translated into Polish, if you gave them back to us to put up on the webpage if anybody else is interested or any Polish behavior analysts wants to read up. At the moment, the material is available in 6 different languages because that was the partners in the funded project. But we're very happy to upload additional translations if they become available. So overall, we also offer an online course that's more for the technician level, because the master's level would be offered through universities. So the online material is in 6 languages. The material itself is free of charge, but if you want to get the certificate that you've completed the course, there's a small charge of £35. So it's a flexible platform. You can use it on your phone, tablet, or laptop, and it's also open to further development. So we then, as part of the project, set up the professional advisory group. There were 22 countries in the group. There's the names of the different countries and one leading behavior analyst per country. So you can see Poland is represented here, and Anna is obviously the representative on the professional advisory group. Here is when we met in Brno. There was actually 30 countries involved because there was a couple of other countries that hadn't actually been in the original PAR group, but there was more people came along, so the more the merrier. We've decided to take one person per country simply so that the countries have to sort out amongst themselves. This group is not to help you sort out any who represents the country. That's up to the country to decide, but we are very happy to have people join the group. So why, when we're talking about finally safeguarding the professional integrity of behavior analysts, why is it so important nationally and internationally? Well, my final word is really, it's all about the consumer protection, because without regulation, there can't be any sanctions for malpractice. Nobody can be traced. Nobody is registered. You cannot quality control what's happening at all without professional recognition. Anybody can call themselves a behavior analyst at the moment in most of Europe, which is absolutely not a good situation to be in at all. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, if you want any information about my work at Queen's University Belfast, you're very welcome. We've also got quite a busy Facebook page, so please join us. And yeah, thank you very much.
As we come to the end of this conference, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to all the speakers, participants, and organizers for making this event a success. Your insights, knowledge, and engagement have truly enriched our discussions and contributed to the overall experience. We hope that the ideas shared today inspire future collaboration and progress in our field. Thank you once again for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you at the future event. Zapraszamy teraz panią dyrektor, dr Annę Budzińską, która chciałaby się z państwem pożegnać.
Dziękuję bardzo państwu za udział. Thank you very much for attending. I mam nadzieję, że wszyscy zobaczymy się znowu za rok. Za rok będzie 20-lecie IWRD, więc musimy wymyślić coś bardzo, bardzo specjalnego. Jeżeli państwo będziecie chcieli zobaczyć to sympozjum, to nagranie, to proszę śledzić naszego Facebooka, będą informacje, w jaki sposób będzie ono dostępne. No i bardzo dziękujemy paniom prowadzącym, pani dr Marcie Wójcik, której badania również prezentowałyśmy podczas naszego wykładu, i pani Ewie Budzińskiej, wykładowczyni naszego niepublicznego ośrodka doskonalenia nauczycieli, bo widziałam, że było pytanie, co to jest NODN. To jest niepubliczny ośrodek doskonalenia nauczycieli. Czyli do zobaczenia w przyszłym roku i życzę państwu równie wspaniałych spotkań z okazji Światowego Miesiąca Wiedzy na temat autyzmu i być może ktoś dołączy do nas jeszcze na niebieskie igrzyska.
Mamy nadzieję właśnie, że państwo dołączą. Te piękne cyfry, które pokazywałyśmy, jeśli chodzi o udział dzieci, tak, te 315 000 w zeszłym roku, a w tym roku już mamy ponad 400 000, to jest zasługa nauczycieli, którzy chcą łączyć się w tą akcję, którzy razem z nami organizują w swoich placówkach niebieskie igrzyska. Mamy nadzieję, że zainspirowało państwa to nasze sympozjum do tego, żeby całe serce wkładać w pracę z dzieciakami, żeby pracować jak najbardziej skutecznie i efektywnie. No i że właśnie to, czym się dzielimy, to nasze doświadczenie praktyków, a z drugiej strony nasze badania były dla państwa inspiracją w codziennej, ciężkiej pracy, ale dającej dużo satysfakcji. Życzymy miłego wieczoru i miłego weekendu i do zobaczenia wkrótce.
I dziękujemy jeszcze ekipie technicznej, której nie widać, ale która też tutaj bardzo trzymała rękę na tym, żeby wszystko sprawnie się działo.
I wszystko rzeczywiście sprawnie się działo, bardzo dobrze, płynnie i państwo, mamy nadzieję, że mogli nas dobrze widzieć, dobrze słyszeć. Także dziękujemy całemu zespołowi i do zobaczenia z państwem, mamy nadzieję, że za rok. Pozdrawiamy.
Pozdrawiamy.
Dobranoc.